Texas at Michigan this Saturday. It is a noon Eastern Time kickoff on Fox, and we'll be there. The whole new Saturday tour right there on the sideline in the big house. Been up there several times. Recently, I had Stats and Info find the number for me. I have been to 7 Michigan games in the past 3 years, and Michigan is 6-1. The one loss was to Mel Tucker, or maybe Kenneth Walker III, and Michigan State. Otherwise, they've beaten Saban with me in the building. They've beaten Ryan Day thrice with me in the building. James Franklin last year. But Washington, they won a national title, but Mel Tucker was the one that tripped them up. This is a true Week 2 special. Mima always warned to make observations but not draw conclusions in Week 1 because Week 2 has crushed many a man's bankroll before. The Week 2 special in college football is this. You watched both of these teams last week, probably. Michigan struggles, feels like they can't get out of their own way against Fresno. Now, the final score ended up looking okay, but it took a long time to get to 30-10. Meanwhile, Texas is just naming the score against Colorado State, 52-0, could have been 72-0. And your mind is working against you here because your mind sees that, what does FanDuel have this? Texas only minus 7.5. That's your first mistake. Your first mistake is saying a team's only favored by north of a touchdown against Michigan at home. This doesn't happen hardly at all. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is there's always multiple examples, exampi, plural of example, of teams that look like a race car in Week 1. And then there's a team that looks like, they are molasses in December in Week 1, and then they meet in Week 2. And you see that the psychology of going through those respective examples of Week 1 performance have an effect on how they play in Week 2. And when they meet each other, your mind is thinking in terms of highlight. Like all you think about when you think about Texas last week is you think receivers running in the open field. You think Quinn Ewers just splitting that seam right there and receiver to the house. And then conversely with Michigan, you're thinking plodding, slow, Davis Warren gets the start. But that's not a full football game, nor is it what this game will be this week. So the Michigan defense knows the game, is my point. Michigan defense does not come into this one thinking, hopefully offense can put up 35 and we'll just do our part. That will not be, in all likelihood, how this plays out. How it plays out is this Michigan defense has held 10 of their last 16 opponents to 10 points or less. And while you're probably not holding Texas to 10 or less, they come into this thing knowing we've got to play a disproportionate role in winning this football game. Now, is that unfair? I don't know. It's football, so suck it up. But I think they're totally comfortable with it. I think Michigan defensively is a unit that relishes it and prides itself in being in a position where it's not quite Iowa bad, but hey, this team here in this moment, situation early in the year, we're probably going to have to go out there and not only are we going to have to stop them, we have to take the ball away a couple of times. Maybe have to disproportionately win the average starting field position battle because we force a bunch of punts, maybe a couple of fumbles, and we start at midfield, and maybe a 10-point swing in the game happens that way. Defense, not an issue last week. There were some issues with Michigan, but defense wasn't one of them. Fresno had 9 rushing yards. Fresno's not a bad team. So what kind of game is this? If they do that to Texas, let's say I try and do the padlock stat. Let's say Texas is 2.7 yards per carry this Saturday. They're really banged up at running back. They're thin there. We've seen Michigan do this. We've seen them turn teams one-dimensional. Even the good teams, when they're one-dimensional, don't plan on that, so they can struggle. So if I were to tell you that, line 7.5 in favor of Texas. Texas is under 3 yards per carry. How much does that change this game? I'd say a lot. Can we assure ourselves? Can we make that forecast? Texas, I think, is the deepest group of pass catchers that Michigan will face all year. Oregon comes in there. Maybe you make the argument that Oregon has better top-end guys, but the depth at Michigan, Bond, Wingo, Jonte Cook, Matthew Golden, Blue's good, even out of the backfield in the pass game. And then Helm and Nyblack at tight ends, Silas Bolden's there. So they are so deep. That was the intel we started to get in the latter portions of camp. It absolutely was validated in week 1, even against Colorado State. You can see how many weapons they have. So I'd feel great if I were Michigan that I have Will Johnson. But Will Johnson alone, or any one corner alone, is not going to answer this. It's got to be a collective effort of that secondary and those linebackers. And honestly, you got to get a whole lot of pressure up front too. But just finding a couple of openings. You're going to be able to probably limit Michigan's scoring. So you don't have to score on every drive here. But finding a few openings, yards after catch, not normally easy to come by against Texas, but the explosives, if they're there, it may not be one dude lighting it up. It may be that you look at that stat sheet and Bond's got 2 catches, but for 63 yards because he popped 1 big play. Bolden, 1 catch, but it's for 38 yards because he popped 1 big play. This Texas offense, think about this, with Quinn Ewers, lot to prove, blah, blah, blah. Those are just storylines and talking points. Their RPO game is going to be a problem for Michigan. And it's important to note that it's a same quarterback in a third year with the same coordinator he's had for a third year. So there's no figuring anything out here. Familiarizing yourself with your talent that you have out wide is one thing, but outside of that, they should be able to click here. They should. Michigan last year, and this is one of the most important points in this game to me, Michigan last year led 95% of the snaps in football games. 95% of the snaps in Michigan games last year, they had the lead. So they didn't trail a whole lot. They did against Bama, and they were resilient, and they came back and won the game. So it's not that it was impossible, but a lot of those pieces are gone. A lot of those coaches are gone. So you've got some folks left over here that experienced that. You got some players here that experienced that, but a lot of the reasons for the experience are gone. So if this team finds itself in a hole, at home or on the road, I don't care if they play this game on the moon, how do they respond? Because Texas can do that to you. Texas can cattle prod you to the neck early in this game. I think Texas has a strong special teams edge, maybe from a personnel perspective, definitely from a coaching perspective. But at the same time, we have seen Michigan do it before. I have stood there and watched Michigan do it before. They played Penix in Washington in the national title game last year. And there were some folks, they don't admit it because it didn't happen, but there were some folks saying, man, Washington, they're just too hot. I mean, no one's stopping this passing game. Well, Michigan did. Penix was 27 of 51, and a lot of that's garbage time too. Touchdown, 2 interceptions, and you're watching it and you're saying, oh man, he's just missing. Oh man, these throws are just out of reach. Well, what do you think his hands were slippery? Michigan's got a lot to do with that. So, Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. The FanDuel number right now is Texas minus 7.5. Model has Texas minus 8.5. So there is a slight lean towards Texas to win and cover. I think this one's going to be a fight. Historically, in recent history especially, when we say that about a Texas game, that means the other team's going to cover or win. The big point of emphasis for this Texas team, joining the SEC, but also even if they were still in the Big 12, needing to beat the teams they're going to have to beat to get where they want to go, has been placing a premium on toughness and physicality. Okay, so the perception is Texas is going to try and go in here and try and run all around Michigan. Michigan's going to try and run through Texas and, just classic bully ball, and can Texas withstand it? Like, can Texas handle it? The mentality from Texas should be, no, we can actually go in there and deal that out too. I think they can. Not to say that Michigan's about to get put on skates, but there's no excuse based on the way Texas has recruited and based on the mentality they've tried to instill in their program, why they go get their nose bloodied and then just cower in a corner Saturday. So I got the offensive edge here. I think Texas can do enough to match physicality that I don't think that's going to be leaned strongly against them. I'll roll the dice. Michigan fans will love this because I did it last year. I'll take Texas to win and cover. I'll take them to make the kind of statement on the road they made at Bama a couple of years ago. I will roll those dice. I'll be the one who does it.